Richard Pankhurst was a poor man's lawyer. That is, he espoused the causes of the downtrodden, the weak, and those who were not represented. And my goodness me, there were lots of them. There was no legal aid at that time in this country, and many people went to court completely undefended. So he took up causes, and he had many trade union clients, because they were always having their money taken off them at that time. And so, to him, public service and to strive for progress was important. But he still had his 5 daughters. There was a lot of other children apart from Emmeline. He still had his children in a traditionally taught. Anyway, although Richard was 24 years Emmeline's senior and had said he would never marry, and said that anything would distract him from his life's work, he was smitten by the young, handsome, I've had her described when she was young, pretty Emmeline. And who wouldn't be when you were 24 years a senior? Anyway, so they got married. And they start to produce, very quickly, 5 children within 10 years. That was another thing women had hardly any control of in that time. There's a great cartoon, a Punch cartoon from that time. Punch was a famous satirical magazine.
Still is.
And is he still going?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know it was. Yeah, well, it was a famous satirical, and there was a cartoon at this time where the wife says to a friend, or whispers to a friend, "I daren't smile at my husband in case there's another child." And that was literally the case a lot of the time. Anyway, they had 5 children within 10 years. Christabel, 1880, and Isabel Sylvia, who always got called Sylvia, 1882, Frank, 1884, and Adele the year after, and then one other child later. Now, Richard was a senior member of the Manchester Liberal Party, but he fell out with them because his politics was more advanced than theirs. Now, when we say advanced in their terms, what that would mean today, in simple terms, would be more left-wing, moving towards a new position which was soon to be occupied by the Independent Labour Party and then the Labour Party. Now, the family then moved to London. Now, he moved to London to get more work, but in the end it was a bad mistake because most of his clients were northwest based. And if you moved to London, you were moving into the busiest legal part of the country with people, barristers, with very long established careers. And it was a very conservative bar in London as well. So he should probably have stayed where he was. But they moved to London and they opened, Richard and Emmeline, a fabric shop. Emmeline was always interested in fabrics and materials. But the shop failed. It was really the room over the shop that mattered, because it was where all the meetings took place. There was always a kettle on, there was always sandwiches, there was always food. Everybody who was anybody in progressive politics would meet there. Women were allowed to attend the meetings. Again, that did not always happen, wasn't always the case. There was a political atmosphere in the house. Richard tried to get into Parliament twice, but he failed. It was hard. Yes, there were Liberal governments at that time, but it was hard to get a winnable seat, and he didn't get one. So Emmeline was already involved in speaking all over the country. And I'm afraid to say, girls, you girls can get quite argumentative. Not with the men, I don't mind that. But you can get quite argumentative with each other. And many of these women's organisations fell out and argued and split up all the while. And it was usually over policies, over how firm to be in opposition, whether to talk a good argument and hope that you persuaded the boys to change their mind, or whether to be more militant, more unfeminine, as some people might have called it. Not me, but some people in the organisations might have. And this caused tensions and splits. On one occasion, there was a huge row between two organisations, within an organisation, and they split up. And they had two new societies on the same, 2 streets apart, and they were known by the addresses of where they used to meet. It does really get extremely complicated. Now, when Emmeline was on a speaking tour, she'd been to the United States amongst other places. When she was on a speaking tour, a young boy, it's the girls who are more noticeable here, but a young boy, Frank, caught diphtheria, which was a blockage of the throat, a terrible, terrible disease, terrible affliction. It killed many young children in the 19th century, particularly bad outbreak in Liverpool just at that time. And Frank died. His mother got back in time, but only just. And obviously there were serious feelings of guilt over that. And despite the fact of Richard's progressive views, I think it was a difficulty for him to understand why his wife had left the child when he was ill. But she was passionate about her politics, and that was it. She carried portraits of the child wherever she went after that, but she never looked at them. They moved to another house in London, more expensive. All that did was just put more pressure on them. She became pregnant again. It was very interesting to be a very Victorian thing to be pregnant again after the loss of a child. Today, fortunately, that would be a cause of great tragedy, of course, at any time. And today, of course, it would. But it must have happened so much in Victorian times to have gone through all that, 9 months of whatever, difficulty, and then to lose a child and then to be pregnant again. Well, she was. Another boy was born, Henry, the last child of the family. So as I said, everybody was welcome in the house. There was a national coalition of suffrage societies, a wide-based organisation with one aim in view: to cover and to demand the vote. But it was agreed not to have any other political affiliations, but a lot of women didn't see the point of that. Women who naturally felt themselves to be conservative or naturally felt themselves to be liberal wanted also to be involved in their own political organisations because they wanted power in them organisations as well. One of the huge rows that took place meant that Lydia Becker, the person who had inspired Emmeline, stormed out of a meeting and said she would never speak to Emmeline again. It was a matter of policy, a matter of how they should proceed. That argument was about whether married women should get the vote. Amazingly enough, lots of married women didn't think the vote was necessary after marriage. Even women who were in favour of the vote, many of them actually said, and important women as well, women with a history, with a status, that once the woman was married, it was unnecessary because the man would vote on behalf of them anyway. That does sound quite extraordinary to me. That was another of the subjects which broke up the existing organisation. So Emmeline and Richard formed a new group, the Women's Franchise League.